Good afternoon, and welcome to the work session for the Sierra Vista City Council for October 12, 2021. And I believe the Mayor Pro Tem is at the Rural Transportation Conference, so she won't make it today. And Mr. Benning has promised that he will catch us on video tonight so that he can catch up. With that, item A is the presentation and discussion of the October 14th council meeting. Of course, we'll start with roll call, invocation, pledge of allegiance, the acceptance of the agenda. Is there anything that on the agenda, any comments, corrections on the agenda for Thursday? Okay. We have some awards and presentations. Ms. Hector's department's going to get some goodies, bringing home some hardware, and we're going to have a proclamation on domestic violence. City manager's report. Chuck, is there anything that you want to mention today?
I'll be attending a CCOM JPA board meeting Thursday morning, so I'll report on the happenings there at the meeting. Mount Dooley will finally be taken down. A lot of thanks goes to Tony and the Public Works crew for putting that together. That bid was to K&G for $852,000, which was far less than what we budgeted. So a very good thing, and that will certainly help us prepare the airport for any future development that might occur there. So. And of course, the EMS substation is underway as well now. So we got some good things going on. And if there's anything else, I'll certainly fill you in on Thursday.
The soil from Mount Dooley is being given to the post.
The Ford has graciously agreed to accept it, and there's an adjacency there, which will also help hold down the cost.
Okay. Any other questions from Mr. Petrucci? No. Okay.
I do want to. I just want to mention. I really like that you're providing the projects in writing now. I just appreciate that, the extra.
That was good.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
The last couple of times.
Okay. We now go on to the consent agenda items. Anything in the meeting minutes for September 23rd that needs correction, additions? Okay. Item 2.2 is a discussion of possible acceptance on public improvements for Summit Heights. Any question on Summit Heights discussion? Okay.
I have one question, sir.
Sure.
For the Summit Heights, before it was built, was there any Was there any limitations to how high houses could be built, things like that? So.
I think that was a. Go ahead, Jeff. I think it was 2 stories, but Jeff, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Rodriguez. There was not a particular limit on the height of some of those buildings. 28 feet is the maximum height that any residential home can be constructed to.
Okay. All right. I only asked that because I guess for future, as we move forward, obviously it's too late for something like this, but I know there's some neighbors that are concerned that their view is gone now for the mountains. They weren't expecting a 2-story house to be built right outside their house, looking into their backyard kind of thing. For some of the neighbors that are on Savannah, they have that to the west of their house. But just something to keep in mind, I think. So I do get some comments about that. I don't know what feedback they provided or what, if not, obviously it was before I came on, so I'm sure that was all covered very well. But I just didn't know how the process worked when it came to neighbors like that. What say do they have, or what comments did they have before that was built?
Well, and that's, view is a issue that comes up consistently all across the city. And the only thing that a homeowner can do to preserve his view is to buy the property that's between him and his view, or her and her view.
Okay.
And really, that's the only reasonable way to do that. The fact that we don't allow anything over 28 feet is probably shorter than most communities. But there's always a risk that if you bought the house for the view and you don't own the land and that's going to protect it, it's on you for making that error.
Okay.
But I don't know how we develop and grow
Right.
unless we, start with the houses with the great views first and then move back, and that's not the way we develop.
Okay.
So that's a tough one, because, in my family, we had a house where we had great views, and even with the 28 feet, we would have been okay, but they brought in large pine trees and put them on our edge of the property, so basically cut off the views.
Correct.
So what are you gonna do?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, good comment. So that's Summit Heights. And item 2.3 is the Kenyatta Vista Phase 1, lots 1 through 29. Any questions? I have a more technical question here. I know there's a drainage basin that's in this area, and based on city standards, the basins are supposed to be able to be drained within, I think it's 36 hours, to prevent pupa from maturing for mosquitoes, because the mosquitoes here can be the type that will have diseases that affect pregnant women and others. And during our great rains this year, that thing didn't drain worth a hoot. So my question is how do we make sure that they're meeting that 36-hour drainage standard so the water isn't stagnant for 36 hours? Because you throw a pebble in it and the time starts again because it ripples, but it's stagnant for 36 hours. So how are we making sure that little pond is doing that?
Well, Mr. Mayor, that is one of the public improvements that are inspected by our Public Works Department. That's one of the things they review, is ensure that it's going to drain appropriately. I've gotten word from the Public Works Department that everything's ready to be accepted, so I have to assume that they inspected that and they determined that it met the 72-hour rule.
Okay, I guess I'll talk to the Director of Public Works. I've got concerns. Believe me, I understand that if it rains today and it rains tomorrow, the clock stops over again, because it has to deal with the stagnant surface of the pond.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, obviously this is, a difficult issue because we do require, retention of the on-site runoff that occurs as a result of development. And there are, unfortunately, examples of some of these basins around town that, especially during this last monsoon, where the water seems to be sitting an inordinately long time, and that is a function of the soils underneath, where the basin is being constructed. So really the only way to do that is to, have appropriate soils testing and pilot the sites before they're actually constructed.
Well, my understanding is when we laid the requirement on them, that the engineering would be done ahead of time, so that in most cases.
I'm hoping that, that was the case here.
Okay, well, that's just a concern.
I know, I get it from the Winter Haven folks.
All the time, yeah,
On that one
Probably
all
the
the
same
time.
people that talk to me. Okay, any other comments, questions? Okay, 2.4 is a discussion of a possible action for reappointment of Mr. Hewitt and Ms. Schloff for the Parks and Rec Commission. Anything there?
That's good.
Yeah, I got some admin things. I don't know why this hit me this time. When I looked at the applications, we still have a requirement that commissioners be citizens of Sierra Vista, right, Joe?
It's postal boundaries,
Postal bound.
so they can live
So
outside the city limits.
if all we see is a zip code, we know we're good. Okay,
Correct.
I got that. Second part is down on the references. It would be nice, I think, to change the address, parentheses address, to parentheses home address. Because I notice on one, we have 2 workplace. And I assume both those people, since they work for the city, also live in the city, but I don't know that. I'd like to know whether they're being nominated from somebody in the city or out of the city.
Okay,
And it's the same thing on the other one. They give the zip code, no address. So, for example, I would assume that the 350 is in the city, even though we do have some 350s that aren't in the city, very few of them.
sure.
And the 050, I would hope that was in the city, but I don't know that it's in the city. So I think we need to change your form
Okay, we'll take a
The
look at
home address
that.
down there, I think would be okay,
Absolutely.
because that gives me more information that I can make a decision on. Okay, anybody else, any other comments? All righty. We'll now go to new business. Item number 3, and that's the discussion and possible action and approval for proceedings, the IDA. Chuck, are you doing this one?
Yeah, I'll start off, Mr. Mayor, and is this the only place we have this agenda? Here?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is the first IDA bond proposal that has been brought before the council for some years, maybe going on 9 or 10 years now. So Mr. Morrow brought this proposal to us, and he is representing the IDA on this matter. It occurred to me at the time that, Mr. Mayor, I think you and maybe Mayor Pro Tem Gray were the only ones here at the time when that was done. So we thought maybe just a little primer on the IDA would be important for the rest of the council to understand what the IDA is and what they do. So Mr. Morrow's here and Mr. Slaney, his attorney, are here, and they'll both have parts in this. But essentially, the IDA is an interesting part of the Arizona revised statutes. It calls it out and allows for municipalities, counties to create industrial development authorities. Once they're created, they're in place pretty much in perpetuity. And the oddest thing about it is, even though it requires the council to create it, there's really only 2 roles that the council has with regards to the IDA once it is created. And those 2 primary roles are appointment of IDA members when there's a vacancy, and approval of bonds when a bond deal is brought before you. And that's what we're here today. So there's been a lot of questions regarding IDAs through the years about that, but in reality, it is its own standalone organization with just those 2 requirements for council oversight. So an interesting thing in the law. So we're here tonight to discuss a proposed bond deal that's being brought forward by the Sierra Vista IDA, and we'll go into a little bit about the IDA first, and then Mr. Morrow will brief you on the actual deal itself this time. But we have to move fairly quickly. It's my understanding the deal needs to be closed by the end of this month, and therefore emergency clause is required as well. So with that, I'll introduce Mr. Michael Slaney, the attorney representing the IDA. And
I have a procedural question.
sure.
We have item B is the presentation for the Industrial Development Authority. So we're gonna do both of them together?
Yeah, well, I think we can knock it out here since it's
Okay,
on the agenda.
all right, because I don't want to do it and then go back and redo it, et cetera, or break it up so it doesn't make sense as we go through.
Yeah, I
it.
didn't know, because we were going into this primer, whether or not it needed to be done separately, so we just covered ourselves to make sure.
Welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, happy to be here. My name is Michael Slania. I've been hired by the Sierra Vista IDA. We have represented them in my prior firm for a number of years. I also represent other industrial development authorities around the state. So IDAs are, as the city manager indicated, an odd entity. They are created under Arizona statutes. They are a nonprofit corporation, but they are done exclusively for the purpose of issuing revenue bonds, and by that action, given the power to act as a political subdivision of the state of Arizona. That allows those bonds to be exempt from tax in terms of revenue bonds. The reason industrial development authorities were originally created were to separate them from the credit and the debt of the governing body, such as the city council. Therefore, any obligation or debt that is incurred, any revenue bond issued by the Industrial Development Authority, is separate and apart from any bonds issued from the city. The credit rating, The analysis done for the revenue stream of a bond of the city is separate and apart from that of the Industrial Development Authority. For that reason, they are only authorized to issue for projects within the statutory authority. That includes a number of different options. One of them is for 501c3 entities. The resolution that is before you for consideration on Thursday is for exactly that, a 501c3 entity. The statute also allows it to be inside or outside the state of Arizona. And that is, again, allowed by the legislature under the statute. The reason the people, other IDAs in particular, Pima, Phoenix, the state, Maricopa, have all done deals outside of their jurisdiction, not only outside of Maricopa County or the city of Phoenix or Pima County, is because of the revenue that is derived back to the IDA. They are allowed under federal law to charge an annual administrative fee. That can also be paid upfront to the Industrial Development Authority. And so that allows the money to be used typically for economic development or housing. The original goals stated in the legislature when the Industrial Development Authority Act was promoted was for exactly that, economic development, housing, and other purposes of the governing body. So the reason they exist is to facilitate and support their governing body, but they have an intent to be separate from that entity. So they can act. The reason under the statute, you are the elected officials. You select the members of the Industrial Development Authority, as every governing body does, and therefore, under the statute, you as the elected officials approve the proceedings of the bonds. So therefore, as in this case, there is a public hearing that is held by the Industrial Development Authority, you approve that being action being taken as well. So I'm happy to answer questions. I don't know how much more you want to know about industrial development authorities. They are a kind of an interesting entity. So
I have a question, Michael. Thank you for coming. And I've been doing some research on this Industrial Development Authority as I spoke with Mr. Morrow just before we started. I'm going to ask some dumb questions because sometimes people will not ask a question because they don't want to sound stupid. But, you know, that's the way it is. Is there any liability to the city of Sierra Vista upon the issuance of these bonds or a possible default on the bonds?
there is no fiscal liability to the city of Sierra Vista, actually, or to the Industrial Development Authority once the bonds are issued.
Okay. Check that box.
Again, that was part of the reason this was all set up, to separate the credit and the credit worthiness of the governing body from the Industrial Development Authority. But in each case, the offering document is very clear that there is no obligation. They are what's called special limited obligations. They are not general obligations, and they are only of the issuer, in this case, the Sierra Vista IDA.
Now, on this particular bond issue, it says an amount not to exceed $50 million. Now, how much would we derive from the issuance of, say, for example, $50 million worth of bonds from the authority?
The intent at this point, and the Sierra Vista IDA has not yet taken action because of the timing, but what has been negotiated is an upfront fee of $100,000 to be paid to the Sierra Vista IDA. The intent, in accordance with their economic development fund, and I can let Mr. Morrow talk about that, but is that money would be used, at least half of it, into the economic development fund.
Right, because I reviewed the IDA's agenda and summary thereof, and I see that they wanted to start a fund. Okay, and we've been sitting here talking about an economic development commission as well. So I'm just trying to sound this out for my own edification. Now, I had mentioned, Mr. Morrow, there that this project is going to take place in Seattle. And one of the things that bothers me is that Seattle City Council has defunded their police department. And I know that that has nothing to do with this, but, you know, those things still stick in my mind. Additionally, some of these properties, and I did some research on MapQuest, that some of them are just blocks from the former CHOP zone that was taken over by activists this past summer. Additionally, this Georgetown Community Development Authority has only been in existence since the 2019, September 3rd of 2019. Mr. Morrow put a lot of these questions to rest, but I thought I'd at least air them publicly. I have no further questions, Mr. Mayor.
Said it was the Georgetown
Community Development
Community
Authority.
Development Authority. Since 2019, it's been available. Is that got any type of a credit rating or track record or?
It is a brand-new entity. It has received its 501c3 status from the IRS. At the time they do that, they have to do projections, but they are a brand-new entity.
Okay.
And they are looking to acquire, and that I hope this is what the information that was also provided, is they're looking to acquire a number of different properties to make a conglomeration, if you will, of all of those, to turn it into, if you will, a artisan marketplace, and then to use the upper floors of some of those buildings as future affordable housing, in keeping with their 501c3 status.
Right, your letter that was attached with our information was quite explanatory, so I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Anything else?
Nothing.
Just a few questions. Thank you for being here and explaining this to us. This is like it first for a lot of us, I guess. The plan for these properties, I looked at a lot of the properties. Obviously, some of them are warehouses. Obviously, some of them are already like artists. Looks like they're already working there, metalwork, ceramics, things like that. A few of them are just looks like houses. And I know in your thing it says it may include housing as well. Mm-hmm. So like some of these properties that were bought in 2021 and 2020 for about $700,000 at that time by somebody else, or is it the same entity that bought it then?
The bond issue is to acquire all of those within the control of that nonprofit.
Okay.
So they could have been purchased by anyone, and I don't know who the current holders of all of the different properties are. But the goal with the proceeds of the bond is to use that money to allow the nonprofit to acquire those facilities.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I noticed one of them was like a whole street, and obviously that it looks like they're trying to plan to take over the whole block and build something out of it from what's there now, I'm assuming. Okay. Also, public comments from, it looks like they did a public hearing January 28th in that area. Was there anything, major comments that came out of that? Because I couldn't find them.
I am not aware that there was anything done, and in fact, associated with that, because at the time of you have a revenue bond issue, the federal tax regulations require both the host issuing body, which in this case would be the Sierra Vista IDA, and the local body, which would be the city of Seattle, to hold a public hearing for comment. Theirs is scheduled for the 20th of this month. And they have to, just like you approve the proceedings of the Sierra Vista IDA, the mayor or elected official at the city has to approve that.
Okay, because I looked online, it said, it's all the same addresses, and it said the public hearing will be held at 1 p.m. Thursday, January 28, 2021, and it had some Zoom if you want to, log into Zoom as well. So I just didn't know if that happened, or...
I'm not aware of whether it happened or not. I know that because of this bond issue, they have to hold a new one.
Okay.
Because they have to identify the city of Sierra Vista IDA as the issuer.
And this other one, it broke it down into project 1, 2, and 3, all the same addresses. Project 1, 21 million, project 2, 9 million, project 3, 6 million, all together 36.5 average. Is that about?
That yeah, the expectation at this point is the amount that is being requested is not to exceed.
Right, not to exceed 50.
50, but
Okay.
it's probably gonna be closer to 42 million.
Okay.
Part of the reason that you're seeing all of this is that they originally, and the reason in part it's come here is the Washington State issuer has already provided a loan to assist with this facility,
Okay.
but they cannot issue the bonds and allow for what's called taxable bonds. So in this case, there will be two series, one for the tax exempt acquisition of those properties, and then second series, which is called taxable, which will allow them to have operating funds and monies to allow this project to work.
Okay.
And so the Washington State rules do not allow for that. So that is the reason, in part, they're coming to an out-of-state issuer, and that's
Okay.
what we're talking about
That,
here.
that's what I was hoping he was coming to, or not coming to, was that they tried this already with somebody else and it didn't work out, and now they're coming to us as their second best, maybe. But I understand why now and how it, like you just explained, for the tax issues. But okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman.
I was actually gonna ask about why it was coming to us, but that answered my question, thank you.
Anything? Okay, well, any further discussion? Frank, did you have something you wanted to share with us as well? Or are we good?
Only if we have questions regarding the creation of how we would use an economic development incentive fund for creating jobs.
Well, now that you mention it,
Those are great things to discuss.
Spoke too fast.
Sure.
I wanna hear all about it.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So the intent, the IDA did pass a resolution to create the Sierra Vista IDA Economic Development Incentive Fund. The intent is to create a set of funds that can be used to incentivize companies to locate to Sierra Vista and local companies to expand. More specifically, a fund that's designed to create grants and loans that can leverage other sources of funds and tied to performance, the creation of jobs. Similar, using a formula similar to an EDA grant or the Economic Strengths grant that's used at the Department of Commerce. We want to be very specific. Create a job. If we're talking about sizable companies, we're talking about getting the biggest impact we can for the dollar. So it's not about seeding programs or using for marketing. I think the intent is because we've been developing proposals for economic development to attract companies here, most recently with Tony, and we get down to this area where we could use just a few more dollars to be competitive. And we really don't have any place to turn. We keep turning to Chuck, and Chuck keeps saying, "Don't look at us anymore. Do your own thing." So,
Well, and let me throw in too, Frank, obviously the state limits our ability to incentivize a lot of these projects. Our participation is really limited to infrastructure. Mount Dooley being taken down as an example of that. So we have to look to other partners to find other funding to incentivize, some sort of economic development prospect to come in. So the IDA is one of those partners, although you've generally been involved in affordable housing, but certainly we would look to try to expand what they can do in the economic development realm as well.
So the IDA owns some real estate, and those funds are used for economic development. This is a way to create another source of funding to build that fund, to promote economic development, and more specifically to incentivize new companies locating here and the expansion of existing companies with plans that are plausible and that we can monitor their job creation in the process. So, that help?
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Are you gonna be here on Thursday in case I think of something?
Sure.
Okay.
She will.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, gentlemen,
Thank
we
you.
appreciate it. Okay, so, anything else on item 3, Chuck?
I think that was pretty well covered, so.
All right, then we'll move on to item 4, which is the discussion on the highway safety grant. And you don't look like Chief Thrasher, but I'm sure he'll show up. So what's going on, Deputy Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This is an annual grant that's offered by the Arizona Governor's Office of Highway Safety. We've participated with the Arizona Southeastern Arizona DUI Task Force for over 20 years as an agency. And this allows us to have officers out dedicated to DUI and impaired driving enforcement without being subject to having to address other calls as they come in. The grant through the governor's office is provided annually, and it covers the overtime cost and the employee-related expenses. And this year, the grant we applied for and were awarded would cover overtime in the amount of $21,549, the employee-related expenses of $8,451, and we also were granted the funds to purchase 4 portable breath testers, which are used during the DUI investigations. So the total of $32,400. Subject to any other questions?
So it doesn't cover PSPRS for the,
Not fully. There is still some PSPRS liability that's not covered.
okay, go ahead.
I can't find it now, but somewhere in the application for the grant, we have our population at 40,000.
Yeah, they're
Why
using the old data. It should be the current population data. I noticed that
Does
too.
it affect anything?
It probably won't for this year.
Oh, thank you.
Says that we're at 40,500.
Is that the very beginning?
500 should be 43,888.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Something like that. I don't know if it matters. I was just wondering why.
Well, they're using last year's census data is what's going on.
Yeah, since is the PSPRS going to be handled through the employee-related expenses? And you said only a portion, but what is the city's liability with respect to PSPRS? Do you know?
Councilmember Johnson, I don't know the exact amount, but I do know that it doesn't cover all of the PSPRS liability.
Okay.
I can find that out, though.
I might be able to help a little bit. Well, PSPRS contribution is an employee-related expense, and we do budget for that. They're only covering the amount, during the duration of the time they're out on the street. So there will be ongoing PSPRS as a result of the extra hours they worked that the city would have to pick up on an ongoing basis.
Well, it's an important function, and I just wanted to clarify that for thank you.
Okay. Anything else on the governor's grant? Next, move to the designating the city attorney to sign for stuff. Oh, my goodness. Mr. Williams.
Imagine that. Imagine that. Mayor, members of council. Each of you has the memo in front of you. Over the last several years, states and local governments have been involved in several litigations against opioid manufacturers and distributors to help pay for the fallout that has resulted from the opioid epidemic. And so during the last couple of years, Arizona Attorney General's office was involved in some of the negotiations with several of these entities, 3 distributors in particular, McKesson, Cardinal Health, and AmerisourceBergen, and one manufacturer, Janssen Pharmaceuticals, which, as you may recognize, is a subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson Incorporated. And so they're at a point where they have 2 major settlements that they're hoping to get through the courts. However, in order for these settlements to be finalized, they need state and local authority or local approval or sign-on. So last year, the Attorney General's office tentatively or conditionally approved the settlement structure for and on behalf of the 91 cities and towns, county cities and towns in Arizona. And at that time, Sierra Vista joined in saying, yes, we agree to the conditional approval of this. However, we're at a point where the rubber meets the road and they need some final authority sign on behalf of local, state and local municipal, local governments. So that's where we are. If we sign on, then Sierra Vista gets to participate and receive portions of these settlement proceeds. Arizona is set to receive up to $549 million out of this several billion-dollar settlement. A portion of that would come to Cochise County, and then Cochise County's share would get distributed even further among the county and then the cities and towns located within Cochise County. The amount of the settlement that Arizona receives is entirely dependent on the number of cities and towns that sign on. And so the more participation we get, the more money we stand to receive. And so, and the only reason this is coming up is because in order to sign off on the final version of Arizona's approval of the settlement, and in order to sign off on these settlements, there has to be somebody designated on behalf of the city of Sierra Vista to authorize and enter into these final binding legal arrangements. It made sense that the city attorney's job or the city attorney's office be the legal signee for the city in this regard. And so that's what this resolution is for, is to formally authorize the city attorney's office, me, to sign off on these documents for the city.
Questions for the city attorney? No. That's pretty straightforward. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Williams. With that, we'll end the council meeting with the call the public comments and requests of council and adjournment. And as we go to today's agenda, item B, the presentation discussion of Industrial Development Authority, I think has been met. So we now go on to item C, report on recent trips, meetings, and future meetings. Everybody jump up. Okay. Future discussion items. One of the things that was left on the table, I don't know whether it was last time or the time before last, dealt with council pay, and hopefully everybody has seen the document that was requested that has the council pay of cities our size and where we average. So the question is, after seeing that we're kind of smack dab in the middle on council reimbursement, is there any thought of discussion for future items on changing council remuneration? Sir?
I looked at it and we're right in the sweet spot.
Yep.
And we're not serving up on this dais to make money. We're here to serve our public. And I would not entertain, personally, speaking for myself only, would not entertain any increases, maybe down the road, but not currently.
And I'm kind of the same way. And so, as far as I'm concerned, that issue is closed until the next time we need to review it.
Right.
Okay. All right, any other future discussion items? I should ask Assistant City Manager, have we got any items that are still pending? Other than, I know we're still working on the draft for the Economic Development Council Group, whatever we're gonna call it.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, that one's scheduled for your November meeting. Coming up here at the next meeting or November, we've got the presentation on the MPO Short Range Transportation Plan by the Mayor Pro Tem. We do have a personnel rules update coming to council for a future agenda, and then council handbook update as well. We're also working on.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Was there anything else that council requested?
Have we settled on a date for, I know there was a memo that went back and forth regarding our November meeting because of the Thanksgiving holiday. Has that been settled?
I think we're gonna split the difference and do it in between, Chuck.
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Mayor. We'll have the normal work session the Tuesday in between the two holidays, and then council meeting then the Thursday between the two.
Okay.
So it'll be the November 16th for the work session and November 18th for the council meeting.
Thank you.
Same times.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And With that, is there anything else for discussion today? All right, we'll see everybody Thursday. Thank you very much. Meeting's adjourned.